All right.
Jimmy.
Well, let's bring them out. The people you've been waiting for. First,
Okay. Cenk Uygur
editor-in-chief of the
versus Ben
Daily
Shapiro.
Wire and host of the Ben Shapiro Show, Ben Shapiro. All right.
Okay.
And founder and host of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur.
Why is this like completely biased? Of like, what is this Mill Action Project? It must be like some super right-wing thing. Because like all the comments are all super pro-right-wing for some reason.
If you guys can be a little more excited, that'd be great.
I'm writing, why are all comments here
All right. Well, we're here to debate
right-wing
the future of
bias
the political parties.
or
And let me just say quickly one thing about the format. I'm going to pose questions to
favor?
both of our speakers here. We'll have a response. We can have a re-response. We can go back and forth a few times. When we've gone far enough, then I will step in. I might ask a follow-up question, or I might switch the topic. So are we ready to go, guys?
Not clear.
All right, well, let's start with one of the topics in the news today, and that's healthcare. And I'm going to start with Ben. Are you proud or disappointed in establishment GOP figures like John McCain, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins for their vote on health?
I'm actually going to look at the comments. I don't want to. Because apparently he's debating to the crowd. Cenk is debating to the crowd, not to Ben. There multiple. Cenk got flustered. He gave the impression that he's not well read. Equality for all of us until it comes to guns. Yeah, I love how Cenk got booed right off the bat. Just can't relate to the audience in any way unless he's insulting the audience. Yeah, okay. So now, well, we saw that the audience booed him, right? So obviously, an audience that like completely cheers Ben and completely boos Cenk right off the bat, obviously. Well, considering that they booed him right away at the beginning. I consider it completely understandable that he would uh he would I don't know, act like that. Even though I haven't even seen him, but I'll remove the comment if it turns out that he's just being sort of silly for whatever reason. Man, I see, I just struggle so much writing. But anyway.
Healthcare.
So I'm wildly disappointed with the entire party. The fact is that we were promised a full repeal of Obamacare. They did not even attempt to pursue a full repeal of Obamacare.
What are these idiot audience?
And the fact of the matter is that there's a significant gap inside the Republican Party about whether this should even happen or not. There are people who believe that the Obamacare regulations are an affirmative good. There was an attempt to basically leave all the Obamacare regulations in place and just remove the funding mechanism, which would have led to the exacerbation of the death spiral. The truth about healthcare is this. There are three qualities of healthcare that you can have. You can have affordability, you can have universality, or you can have quality. And you can have two of those three things, but not all three. Right? You can have universality, affordability, or quality. Two of those things you can have. And one of the things that's happened with Obamacare is that you've gotten closer to universality.
That's basically not true. So basically what you're saying is that if you don't have universality, like you can have affordability and quality, but which means that you basically nobody can have quality and affordable healthcare. I mean, not everyone can have quality, affordable healthcare, but I think universality is more important because, like, just a basic thing to keep you alive, like healthcare is literally needed to help you alive. So what he's saying is that we should just allow some people to have affordable and quality healthcare, but other people to have simply no healthcare. So that's what he's saying. So obviously, if you just completely not give healthcare to some people, then obviously the people who do have it will have more quality and more affordable healthcare. But like, how idiotic can one be? Like, Ben is like such an idiot, okay? Like, no, you can actually have if you're taking into account everyone, if you actually factor into the fact that some people are not having any healthcare at all, then your healthcare is not more quality, it's not more affordable. The United States is actually spending a lot more in percent of its GDP for healthcare. So I don't really see how that is sort of affordable in any way. So that's completely mistaken. Um, and like there are plenty of countries, I'm partly from Switzerland, so Switzerland has universality, even though it has a stupid system of having separate insurers, but there's still universality because everybody's supposed to have health insurance, and you got plenty of quality and affordability. Well, for Switzerland, I would say it's affordable. So it's just complete crap.
But you haven't gotten any closer to either affordability or quality. And the Republican Party seems to be falling into the trap of basically
But yeah, but in fact, but I don't even know, like basically, like much of the reason why, I mean, there lots of reasons why it costs a lot. To some extent, it's precisely there's some extent of like administrative issues that make the prices go up. I actually looked at charts explaining sort of what amounted to the cost of healthcare in different countries. I mean, it seems that a lot of it is actually just that doctors are being paid a lot more in the US. And medical professional and procedures and hospitals and all that. And so if we want to cut down costs, we'd also have to address that. And then there's of course the cost of like drugs, and there's a cost of there's all sorts of things, but like you can do things separately. You can make a move towards affordability. You can make a move towards universality independently. And so Obamacare is a step towards universality, but I don't like it precisely because it's still much too complicated. I want something that's simple. And so what I would have is just a simple system that's where it's actually nationally paid for.
just copying what the Democrats do, except being worse at it. What they actually need to do is relieve the regulatory burden that is driving up the cost of healthcare, and they need to stop acting as though
It's not
insurance
doing
companies'
that.
jobs is actually just to reimburse people for their bad health. If you join up with an insurance company and your health sucks to begin with, you are going to pay more because it's an insurance company, not a charity. And that doesn't mean that we
But
can't have
it should be a charity. Like it should be literally, you should be allowed to have proper medical care irrespectively of your level of health, which is precisely a great argument against having a medical insurance and an argument instead in favor of having the cost covered by the government.
Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have some form of backup for people who have pre-existing conditions. I would hope that the social fabric would help fill that in. This is why I'm a big believer in charity and churches and synagogues filling that.
I personally completely disagree with that. See, that's the thing that they, for some reason, they want it to be just up to the goodwill of people to do that kind of thing. I completely disagree with charity. Like literally, a government is just a charity, but has a sort of unified, standardized thing, right? It's that is much better, right? It's much better and it's much more equitable because then everyone gets to pitches in equally. See, a charity is basically a tax on the generous. I so terribly
That
disagree with
gap.
them.
But what we can't do is suggest, as the Bernie Sanders left does, that health care is an inalienable right, and therefore you can put a gun to my wife's head, she's a doctor, and you can force her to provide care at
I just hate Ben Shapiro.
any cost you want to pay. You can't do that and hope to increase the supply of health care. Health insurance is not health care. They're not the same thing. And anybody who tells you differently is lying or trying to sell you something.
Excellent.
Actually, you don't put a gun to a person's head. You just like maybe fire a doctor who refuses to provide a service. Like, yeah. And look at how they're cheering. What is this Politicon? Why is it full of shitty people? Is to bring Republicans, Democrats, and people of all political stripes together to banter and spar over the most topical issues in smart and entertaining ways that often poke fun at both sides of the aisle. Okay. I don't know why. Problem with Politicon is that the villains and heroes are real. What is this? I don't know. Why are there more people? Maybe Ben just has more fans or something. I don't know. Oh man, he's really disgusting. I really fucking hate Ben Shapiro.
Cenk, your take on the healthcare vote.
Great. Before I do that, first of all, welcome to the Thunderdome.
Yeah, they're just like, well, I'll wait to see what he actually has to say.
All right. Let's hear him speak.
Guys, wait till he does something. I mean,
In all seriousness, the reason that I kid around about that is that I really want to make sure that Ben's opinions are heard and my opinions are heard, and that there's an exchange of ideas. And believe it or not, there are some things that we do agree on, and what we won't be discussing those tonight. So on the issue of healthcare, let's get going. So the Democratic Party is incredibly proud that they defeated a bill that had 17% approval rating. It's a low bar, and I'm glad they held. The Republicans have a comical position, which is that why didn't the Democrats help us defeat Obamacare? Well, that's kind of because that was their idea, and why in God's green earth would they help you defeat their own plan? Now, is Obamacare enough? Not nearly. And there are a number of issues that we had as progressives with it, including lack of price controls. You left it in the hands of private insurance, and of course, them being corporations, which Ben kind of alluded to there, they're going to want to make money. And so that is very, very normal. And so I don't think that that was the right way to approach it, and it was originally a Heritage Foundation plan to begin with. So I believe that the right approach, and the one that Democrats should pursue next, although they probably won't, is Medicare for all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Cenk. Thank you. Okay, so like how is he getting flustered and saying the wrong things?
So
Great.
real quick, let me explain why. Medicare polls at 77% and actually accomplishes the three things that Ben talked about. It's universal coverage, it is affordable, and actually gives you good insurance. That's why it polls at 77%.
But of course, it depends even what you mean by Medicare for all, because lots of people that say Medicare for all, it doesn't refer to Medicare as it currently is for all. It often refers to actually what I was saying, to just have their government expenses covered by the government, like the NHS.
And Medicare for all now polling at 60%. Federally funded health insurance for everybody polling at 61%.
So I don't believe, again, I don't believe in health insurance for all. I believe in like paying it through taxes, which means that you basically you pay it proportionally to your income. So instead of paying the same amount irrespectively of your income.
I tell to my Democratic friends, you might want to try something that's popular for a change. So, and finally, like on the idea that, hey, listen, everybody can't get health care. Well, this is not like furniture, which sometimes you allude to, Ben. You could have good furniture, bad furniture. I've had it all, right? That's optional. If you don't have good health care, you die.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like a question of, getting like being allowed to be able to acquire like better quality stuff, if you work hard or something. Everybody should be at the same level for healthcare, right? Because like everybody's life should be considered equally worthy. The Republican mindset is if you don't do well in a free market economy, literally your life is not worth being saved. It's like literally you don't have the same right to live. Like literally, it's saying your success in the free market economy determines the extent to which you have a right to live.
And so I view it as not something that capitalism should deal with, and I believe in capitalism, and I think they make great sneakers, but something that is about equality of opportunity, and you cannot have equality of opportunity if you're dead. So Medicare for all.
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So a couple of notes in response to the Medicare for all shtick. So this is Bernie Sanders shtick, obviously. The problem with Medicare for all is that when people say that it's affordable, this isn't affordable to the person who has the Medicare. It is not affordable to the country. In fact, it is so unaffordable to the country
but the whole country, it's meaningless. Like, yeah, you have to pay more in taxes, but it's all that much less that people are individually paying for. So you gotta think about it. Like, you can't you can't just say it's unaffordable because you have to pay for it in taxes, or you say it's unaffordable for the country. Um, in any case, Cenk wasn't even necessarily talking about paying for it through taxes. But obviously, yeah, if people are gonna, if like the people who currently don't have medical coverage are gonna be covered, then it's gonna cost a bit more. Like, yeah, yeah, all other things being equal, yeah.
That the state of California was a nut job leftist state, just refused to even pass Medicare for all because it would have immediately doubled the debt.
Why are they like cheering? They're like literally, these people are just complete idiots that are gonna like die from some disease when they're old because they don't have access to proper healthcare. Or of course maybe they will, work within the system and then they'll have the money and they'll okay, and then they'll just be okay that other people are dying. But why does like right-wing politics even have this much support? It just completely com I just don't understand.
As far as the idea that Medicare, that medical care is a right, but it's not actually a good or a service, this is a way to make things less plentiful. If you declare things rights, but you don't actually incentivize the creation of those things, you don't get more of them. So the South African Constitution has right in there that healthcare is a right, that housing is a right. The fact is that you don't have good housing or healthcare in South Africa because just
But also maybe just because it's a much poorer country overall.
declaring things rights does not make them appear. What makes more things appear is a market-based system that creates more doctors, that creates more medical care, that creates more incentives.
Except that doctors are actually like the whole system is made to limit the number of doctors so that that way there's an artificially low supply so that doctors then are able to jack up their own prices. So it's not a free market. So yeah, obviously if you stop, so maybe Ben you'd support stopping to do that. But like yeah, it certainly isn't a free market. In any case, the whole point is that like how do I put this? Again, the free market logic works for like things that you don't actually need for your survival. However, when it comes to things that you actually require for survival and that you might not be able to pay for, then that logic breaks down. That logic breaks down. And in any case, doctors still do their job if they're paid like civil servants in general. Anybody who has a job that is paid for by the state, there are people who are willing to do them, even if it's just at a sort of standardized salary. You don't need to have you don't need to have a free market for everything.
For people to join up. So my wife is a doctor. That means she has to go through 1,000 years of medical training, and we have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make her a doctor. The idea that you're going to have the government come in and then dictate the sort of care that she should provide to each particular patient, and then dictate how much she should be paid for that care, is going to lead to a decrease in the number of people who are going into the medical industry.
Yeah, except that lots of them now are trying to get in and are not able to because they're being stopped.
Which decreases the level of care overall. This is why I say that it is better to treat things as goods than as rights, because declaring something a right just means that you have the right to steal it from me. But declaring something a good means that you get a market process that leads to lower prices and better care over time. And the big problem we've had before Obamacare is that it was already treated quasi as a right. You had it heavily regulated on the state level. It is continually heavily regulated.
Yeah.
The idea there's a completely unregulated market is absolute nonsense. The reason that you have employer-based health insurance in the first place was as a response to wage and price controls placed in the aftermath of World War II, and employers began giving health insurance as an actual good, right? They gave it as an actual incentive to their employees. If you had an actual individual-based health insurance market, you bought it just like you bought your car insurance, you would see more and better health care for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm against the sort of whole employer-provided healthcare thing, and I think it should be done more it should be absolutely done on an individual level. So yeah, just again, because it's sort of more of a complication. It's like a burden on employers. So I mean, there is, to be fair, that there is an argument for Ben's position, and it's not entirely like unreasonable. But the problem, again, like I said, is that I think that healthcare is the kind of thing that you should actually um, pay for in proportion to your income rather than at just the same absolute amount. So that's why I support more a government funded system for that reason. Um, yeah. And yeah, again, and this sort of fact that then the insurance actually refuses to cover you for any illness pre-existing conditions that you have. That's absolutely atrocious.
Yep. All right. So, Ben, I don't want to steal health insurance from you. I want you to be healthy. That's why I want Medicare for all.
Yeah.
You just want to take my money and my wife's services.
So, Republicans frame taxes as stealing. That's preposterous. So
Yeah,
if
it
we
is.
don't have
It is preposterous because the money that you get through the market is not fair, okay? It's not equitable. It's not actually earned money. So it's perfectly okay to take it back because you never earned it in the first place.
taxes, if we don't have taxes, well, we can't do all the things that we want to do as a community. Now, there are some things that we just talked about that we don't want to do as a community, we want to do as individuals. In fact, the things that we want to do as individuals are much greater. That's why we're a mixed economy, but largely capitalist. And I agree with that. And I run a small business myself.
See, he's like literally a capitalist. He's like Cenk is literally a right winger in absolute terms, right? He's literally a right winger because he still favors an economy that works mostly in a free market capitalist system. Like imagine that. Like imagine Cenk actually being portrayed as some radical left wing person when he's actually right of center, okay?
Getting larger every day. So, but there are some things that the government should do. They should do the military, cops, roads, bridges, and yes, education and healthcare.
Yeah, like literally, he is right of center, like Bernie, like AOC, a bunch of people who are like literally right of center.
That's because, conservatives
And like me, I'm also right of center.
seem a little confused.
It has like nothing to do with actual socialism. I mean, like not nothing, because obviously you have some government services, but just like nowadays. Because, and again, remember right wingers, you tell them like, oh, well, maybe let's defund the police. Oh, how dare you suggest that? But wait, I thought you wanted smaller government. And then like they just completely like weasel out of that.
About how healthcare works. Paul Ryan had a whole press conference about this. Ben a little bit alluded to it there. They're like, oh my God, it turns out the healthy subsidize the sick. Yeah, that's insurance. That's how it works. It's like the people with that are not getting into accidents are subsidizing the accidents. Yes, that's car insurance. That's how insurance works. And yes, taxes work in that we all decide we're going to do X, but we're not going to do Y. And I think it is fair for society to say that yes, we are going to do health care for everybody. Everybody. We're not going to leave 20 million people uninsured. We're not going to leave 30 million people uninsured. That's not what we do in a civilized society.
Yeah. Thank you, Cenk.
And from time to time, the attack against Medicare, they say, oh, it's an entitlement. Yeah, we paid for it through payroll taxes our whole lives. You're goddamn right we're entitled to it because we paid for it. We paid for it. And so when you
How to pronounce this actually? I'm just gonna see if I'm doing it right. Just see if it's Cenk. Oh God, I bet I got this wrong. Am I not hearing it? Come on. Why am I to have no sound? Okay, well, never mind.
take out the middlemen of the insurance companies that put their profits in there, that put their marketing in there, that put their lobbyist money in there, that means more savings for Americans. And so finally, the idea that it can't be done is preposterous since every other Western developed country does some version of single payer. It obviously can be done, and it is done at lower rates and better coverage.
Yeah, thank
Let me
you. Thank you.
add something to this question, and you can respond to it if you want to. But Cenk referenced Paul Ryan. When
Yeah,
the
sure.
Republicans took control of Congress, Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, famously said, "We need to switch from being an opposition party to being a proposition party." So what's your evaluation, Ben, of their efforts in that direction to unite the party and move legislation forward?
I mean, we all have eyes. They suck at it. I mean, and Paul Ryan is not exactly my go-to guy when it comes to political acumen and genius. So I'd more want to respond to some of the contentions that Cenk was making about Medicare for all and single-payer health care. A couple of things. One, when you say we pay for it, that's not technically true. The idea that everybody who's paying into Medicaid paid for it and now they get out what they paid in is obviously not true. It is a redistributive program, and to pretend otherwise is just silly. The people who are paying the payroll taxes are not the people who are taking out through Medicaid, obviously.
Can I just address that
Yeah, but like,
super quick? So if we're talking about Medicare, right? Not Medicaid.
Right.
So in Medicare, so you're both correct and incorrect. So it's not like I put in $20 and I get $20 back. That part is true.
Right.
But we all pay into Medicare together, and then we all get it when we are
Can I
sick.
ask you, so can I
which
ask
is
you a question?
insurance.
I have two questions, really serious questions. One, what is your ideal tax rate? Because it's going to cost a lot of money for a lot of this stuff. And two, what is your ideal level of medical care? Because the fact
but again,
is that
that's completely irrelevant. Like, if you're paying less, if you're not paying for like a specific insurance by instead having like a tax rate, obviously it's going to come to the same to you in the end, right? Like, if you're doing it like through taxes, and which would be like potentially the way you're going to do it, and like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me.
spend millions of dollars on people at end of life care.
But like, because basically, if you're saying it costs more, it obviously means that we're actually going to be covering people who currently aren't covered and who aren't getting the medical treatment that they need. So basically, what Ben is saying is that it costs money to not let people die. That is what Ben is saying.
Can spend millions of dollars on surgeries and preventative care. I mean, healthcare is an expensive business, even under a single-payer system, which is why generally you end up with rationing. So, what is your ideal level of healthcare that is provided to everyone, and what sort of tax rate are you proposing to subsidize that?
Yeah. So those are very, very fair questions. So let's talk about taxes for a second. So conservatives agree or say all the time that the golden era of America was the 1950s and 1960s. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. Our economy was booming at the time, and we became the #1 economy in the world at that time. The tax rate for the highest bracket fluctuated between 70 and 91%. So that is
yeah.
when we were at our best.
That is true for high earners, but it's also true that there's an enormous amount of loopholes. So in practice, the tax rate was much lower than that.
Now, I want to be clear. I'm also a businessman, and boy, that seems high. It does, okay? And one of the reasons my family were Republicans when I was growing up was because before Reagan came in, the highest marginal tax rate was 70%. So now we are nowhere near that.
Yeah, but Reagan also, he closed the loopholes in his 1981 famous act thing when he came in. He closed lots of loopholes. So in fact, apparently the effective tax rate was not that much lower.
We have reduced taxes to bare bones, and we have shifted the taxes onto the middle class and away from the rich and corporations.
But yeah, still absolutely that.
So there is a much
Yeah, for some reason, Republicans, they're perfectly happy to pay more taxes if it means that rich people can pay less taxes.
better
Like literally, they'll just vote for anything as long as it opposes the Democrats.
balance to be had. And if you said to me, well, you're going to have $800 in taxes that are new, I say, wow, that hurts. But you're going to save $1,000 in premiums, deal. That is a deal I will take.
Yeah, again, like all you idiot right-wingers, you're going to actually like save money if you pay less in premiums than you have to pay more if you get more removed in premiums than if you get added in taxes, you'll end up with more money in your pocket. But somehow because it's taxes, like you hate it, like you're perfectly okay with paying tons in premiums. But if it's a tax, then no, it's like the government evil, whatever. But you're perfectly happy to pay for it as long as it's a private business that's charging your premium. Like, you idiots make absolutely no sense, okay?
Every time, because I can do math.
Okay.
You fucking
So-
idiots.
That is the beginning
Look.
of your answer to tax.
Again, Republicans do not deserve to have their votes counted. They can be allowed to vote, but you do things anyway. I'm sorry, I don't believe in democracy for idiots. That idiots should not be allowed to vote. And Republicans simply should not be allowed to vote because they're mentally ill, and if they basically are completely crazy, and as such they don't even know what's good for them. Just like children, you don't let them make their own decisions. You don't let them vote or other things because they don't know what's good for them. Likewise, Republicans do not know what's good for them.
Taxes, and then you said how much care. Well, so that is something that all the countries that do single payer or a version of single payer struggle with, and they have learned a lot of lessons. And if we stop saying America's number one, we might actually just, first of all, on this issue, we're number 37. And if we looked at what Japan is doing so well, keeping costs down to half of ours and less, we might actually learn something from Japan, Switzerland, and other countries. And by the way, when we say Medicare for all, Medicare Advantage exists. So you can actually add private insurance on top of that, and I find that perfectly great. I have no problems with that at all. So that is the government making sure you don't die and actually lowering rates for you. And then if you want more insurance, no problem.
So all this sounds great, except for the fact that Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security eat up 66% of the federal budget every single year. The idea that all of these socialized medicine countries have it so much...
What? It does not eat up 67 of the entire federal budget? Like, no.
better than we do, particularly in terms of cancer care, is a joke. We are still number one in terms of 5-year cancer survival rate here in the United States. And when you talk about top...
I would have to look that up, but I would say that, like, compared to a place, like Japan or like in Switzerland, like you mentioned, the survival rates would be the difference would be very low, and it's probably not taking into account the people who aren't covered.
Top marginal tax rates in the 1950s, there are a couple things that are worth noting. One, that was top individual marginal tax rates, not necessarily the business tax rate. We now have some of the highest corporate tax rates altogether in the industrialized world.
Yeah, that's true, but there are also lots of loopholes. In fact, lots of corporations don't pay anything in taxes as a result. And well, in any case, yeah, I advocate for zero corporate tax, but and a pretty high 50% personal income tax flat rate.
And if you would prefer for us to destroy half of the world before we become the only country that didn't have its industrial capacity destroyed, which is what happened in the 1940s, leading to us being the only productive country on planet Earth, essentially, for the next 2 decades, I'm not with you there. I'm not really in favor of having a giant world war that destroys all industrial capacity across the West, so that we're the only people who actually have the capacity to produce anything and just markets that we can provide to.
But it's kind of ironic considering that basically that is literally the Republican platform, is like to put other countries down to put the USA on top.
Right. So, first of all, it is fair to say that, of course, the 1950s and 60s were different. We'd just come out of the war. So, but you have to consider all the different factors. So one was that factor, and the other factor that was the one I mentioned. So when Republicans or conservatives say, well, high taxes by definition will lead to slower growth, well, we know because of our experience in the 1950s and 60s that isn't true. Now, you can say there are other factors, but you can't say that the highest marginal tax rate being 70 or even 90% slows down growth, because it didn't. And it wasn't in Japan and Switzerland, it was right here.
Yeah, and also, like, these communist countries did actually grow economically. Like, the Soviet Union did grow steadily. This is something that all these people who say the USSR failed conveniently ignore, is that the USSR steadily grew in economy over time. It didn't grow very fast, admittedly. It wasn't particularly efficient, but just still.
And by the way, as a guy who grew up Republican, I was surprised by that too. I was surprised that Finland's system of non-competition in schools worked, but it does. So we have to be open to facts and understand. So, and on the issue of where we're good and not good in healthcare, sure, there are different areas where we excel. But Ben, honestly, you're cherry picking there one particular area that we're good. Overall, we're number 37. That is not a good result.
Well, you have
and look at life expectancy rates also in the United States. That's perhaps more telling. Life expectancy is definitely not number one in the United States. Lots of other rich countries have higher life expectancies.
Dying from cancer, we're dying from other things. It's empirical. We are not as healthy.
Yeah.
And finally,
thank you, Cenk.
And finally, this idea that corporations are paying the highest tax rate is both, again, true and untrue. The part that it's true is, hey, there's a rate of 35%. The part that's not true is They don't actually pay that. There is giant
Yeah,
loopholes.
thank you, Cenk. Although again, it's important to mention that, well, you failed to mention that there were loopholes also on the 70 and 90% thing back in the mid 20th century.
And they've got $2 trillion sitting offshore, and they won't bring it in. And the reality is that if you look at the taxes from the 1950s, corporations used to pay about a third of our taxes, about 33% of the taxes overall. So they did their fair share, and that is fair.
I don't know those
I don't want
figures,
them paying
so
all of
can't
it, but I
comment.
want them paying a reasonable amount. Now, the share that
screen,
corporations pay of taxes is down to 10%. You see what they did there? They did wealth redistribution. They took your wealth and redistributed it to them.
Well, again, as long as it's just a corporation, I don't actually think it's a problem because corporations actually, produce things and are useful for the economy. What's a problem is that then that money goes to particular individuals who then just spend it on their own useless things for their own benefit. And so that's why I actually advocate for 0% corporate tax. And like, if you want fairness between people, which is actually what matters, right? We want equity. Well, equity, like corporations, they aren't people, so it doesn't matter if they're big, if they're small, whatever. What matters is equity between people. And so the way to achieve that is by regulating personal income, including capital gains and all that, right? So, and that's what I advocate for. And as I've said elsewhere, so what I advocate for is a basic income of 10,000 a year, tax-free, maximum income after taxes of 100,000 a year for now, and then it will just track the increase in global GDP per capita. And between those figures, well, you got a 50% personal income tax rate, including things like capital gains, so and inheritance and all that stuff. Just really all income.
Okay.
Ben, I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, one more
go
quick
ahead.
point, and then
Sure.
I'll be done with this because we can do healthcare for 8 hours here. But two things. One, I'd like to know which tax deduction. When people say tax loopholes, a tax loophole is just a tax deduction that's available to everyone, and some people take advantage of it and some people don't. I can't take advantage of certain corporate tax deductions because my business isn't in those businesses, for example. I'm sort of with you in the sense that I'm not in favor of tax deductions. I'm in favor of a lower tax rate and get rid of a lot of the tax deductions because I think that it's ridiculous that we have people gaming the system. That said, I'd like to know which tax deductions you'd like to do away with. And I'd like to know also when you say that corporations pay 10% of the taxes, right, and individuals pay the other 90%, okay, so that means the taxes are still getting paid to a higher rate than we ever have in our history in terms of the tax revenue to the government. The amount of tax revenue to the government right now is trillions of dollars every year. And final point here. You elided this question by saying we can learn stuff from Japan. The standard of care is the entire question when it comes to single-payer health care. That is the entire thing. If people felt like they were going to get the same access to care in a single-payer healthcare system as they did in a system where they can pay their own way, then we would have no controversy here. But the fact is that rationing is mandated as
Yeah, well, to some extent, that is actually true. Like right here, I'm in New Zealand, and you definitely have the sort of system of rationing. But that's probably just because New Zealand's a bit poorer, like compared to Switzerland, where that wasn't an issue. And so in Switzerland, with you also have universal coverage. It's not, it's also basically a government thing because it's like it's the government that sort of the insurance and the government sort of collectively manage to sort of negotiate the prices for and to negotiate what gets covered by what insurance. And so we've got a bunch of different health insurances, but ultimately they're still paying the same standardized prices. And so that works fine. And in fact, that's why I think that Switzerland could really just shift to a single payer system, and it wouldn't change anything in reality. So and yeah, and there wasn't really an issue of rationing at all. And obviously, like right now, the U.S. doesn't have rationing, but it's just at the expense of some people having no care at all, right?
soon as you start having the government run the healthcare system and decide what level of care people get. So I don't want anyone deciding what level of care that I can.
Yeah, you don't want anyone. What you want is the market deciding what kind of, level you get. That is even worse because it's even much more inequitable.
Get. I don't want anyone else to. They don't care about me. They don't know my child's name. They don't know my name. All they know is how much I cost. I mean, Ezekiel Emanuel's at least honest about this. Ezekiel Emanuel comes out and says, listen, I want to die at 70, right? I want to die at 80. That's fine with me. I'd rather die at that. Well, that's good for him. But if I don't want to die at 80, or I don't want my father to die at 80, it's none of his damn business.
Yeah, and if you're like a poor person that can't afford proper coverage, maybe you don't want to die at 80 either. And so what's going to happen is that maybe with the universal coverage, you'll have some people who, some rich people who'll die a little bit earlier because they won't have quite as much access to completely top-notch healthcare. What you'll have instead is a lot of poorer people who will have much better healthcare and who will live a lot longer, so that your overall life expectancy and health outcomes will be a lot better.
So when you say tax revenue is at its highest point, now you know that that's misleading, because everything economically is at its highest point, meaning that we have a lot more people in the country than we did in the 1950s and 60s. So
Okay, but that being said, in proportion to the size of the economy, the tax revenue is higher. I've been looking into this in pretty much all rich countries. The proportion of GDP that goes to government has been steadily increasing.
hence we are collecting more overall taxes. But the reality is,
And a much bigger
as
economy.
a percentage, it is clearly down.
No. Let's look at this. Percentage of government expenditure, percentage GDP government expenditure by country, by decade, something like that. I'm not sure if they have, because this is just for now, but I'm not sure if they have it. Oh yeah, here, this is it. Yeah, historical development. Look at it. United States. We'll have United Kingdom too. See, United Kingdom first. See, 1850, 10%, then it went down a bit in the late 1800s, but it stayed, like, more or less, it just stayed kind of that level. Then 1920s, it only went up to the sort of 20% range. Then 1950 in the 30% range, 1970 in the 40% range, and then 2000 still like that. Then 2010 and 2020, now it's in the 50%. United States, incredibly low, 1.56% in 1850, stays very low until 1910. And then suddenly 1920, 7%, 1930, 3%. I'm surprised it really is that low. 8% in 1940 really is that low. 1950, 13%, 1960, 28%, 1970, 32, 1980, 34. So that stayed pretty much kind of in that same ballpark. So since the 1960s, it's kind of stayed in that ballpark. 37% 1990, but then back down to 34% in 2000. So kind of didn't increase that much between 1960 and 2000. Then it goes up again, and now into the 40s, 42% in 2010, 46% in 2020. So yeah, it is at the highest in percentage, according to this. Then where is this info from? 3, 4. So government expenditure, IMF. Okay, so apparently it's IMF government spending. Where's the United States? There's no United. Oh yeah, the red. Okay, so it's the where it kind of comes up. Um, yeah, you got to see it, because if I take my mouse off, then um, yeah. So there's that line, that the red line that sort of got big. So yeah, we are at the highest ever in the United States. Uh, yeah, yep. It went up quite a lot in there. See, in 1960, basically, it seems to have gone up a lot. All right, all right.
Top bracket now is around 39%. It used to be at 91%. That's inarguable, right?
But our economy is significantly larger than it was then, and part of that is because of reductions in taxes over previous decades.
Well,
Except that the rate of growth has not actually increased; it has decreased over time. Look, U.S. GDP per capita per year. Real GDP per capita. Okay, look, real GDP per capita. It's like pretty just linear. I mean, there it seems to increase a bit slower at the beginning, but that's because like it was smaller overall. So proportionally, obviously, that is actually even higher. See? So okay, the absolute rate was maybe a bit slower there, but proportionally it was bigger. See there, you like increased it this segment here over like 13 years or something. That is an increase of about uh, like a third more, and like here over a similar time scale, you have a bit less than that proportionally. So it depends. In absolute rates, maybe it's increased a bit, but look, Germany is the same. So basically, it's just been increasing pretty steadily. Okay, it's just increasing pretty steadily. So I don't think you can argue really that it's thanks I mean, look, Reagan, this is Reagan's time. So first, basically, when Reagan comes in, suddenly, okay, so that was Germany. This is the United States. So when Reagan comes in, it kind of looks like it was down. Okay, so maybe Reagan actually just started influencing the economy this year, so it kind of went up more there. But come on, like compared to there, it's not that big of a difference, right? Then it went up like that too. But okay, as a result of Reagan's policies, I don't think we can really say much from that. I don't think there's much to be said. So basically, no. My theory is that basically the economy is largely inelastic. Like because lots of goods, you're willing to pay for them even if they're at a higher price. Likewise, people are willing to work even if they're paid less. And so this means that if you're going to tax your economy 50%, it's not like there's a one-to-one ratio between like the demand or the supply or whatever we're specifically talking about, um, and like how much you can get. Like it's not a one-to-one ratio, which means that there's relative inelasticity. I mean, I would have to actually like draw it out to explain it better, but the idea is that like taxing the economy 50% is not going to cause a reduction of economic output by 50%. I mean, that would be absurd, right? So yeah.
We tried supply side economics. Hey, Kansas, how's that working out for you?
Yeah, what important thing to note is that like median income since since the 60s basically, and since like all these tax cuts have hardly increased at all for the poor and medium people, where they've increased a lot for rich people. Like basically all economic growth since then has been going to rich people, and very little has been going to other people. So yeah, yeah. Obviously, the trickle down thing does not work. It's trickle up. It's trickle up, not trickle down.
So there's this myth that
It's working out for you. Your business is doing great.
okay, yeah. Well, we just had 8 years of Obama. So the tax rate is clearly lower for the richest people in the country. It is clearly lower for corporations, in effect. It is, and so to say that it's a record collection is misleading. So in terms of the healthcare and how that relates to the government, oh, by the way, on one more thing on taxes, you said, name me a tax loophole. So yes, there are plenty of those. For example, they hide their money offshore. They do tricks like the double Dutch and the Irish sandwich or the reverse. And I would end that. I would say, hey, you know what? If we've got a 35% rate, here's the new rule. You're going to pay 35%, okay?
What's the double Dutch thing? Double Dutch. Double Dutch tax evasion. Double Irish with the Dutch sandwich. Dutch sandwich is a base erosion profit shifting corporate tax tool used mostly by U.S. multinationals to avoid incurring EU withholding taxes on untaxed profits as they're being moved to non-EU tax havens. These untaxed profits could have originated from within the EU, from outside the EU, but in most cases were routed to major EU corporate-focused tax havens such as Ireland and Luxembourg, and by the use of other BEPS tools. Explanation: the structure relies on a tax loophole that most EU countries will allow royalty payments be made to other EU countries without incurring withholding taxes. However, the Dutch tax code allows royalty payments to be made to several offshore tax havens without incurring Dutch withholding tax. The Dutch standard therefore behaves like a backdoor out of EU corporate tax systems and into untaxed non-EU offshore locations. I don't really get that, but okay, so basically, like, I don't know, you can do a Dutch, it's like a tax haven thing, basically, I guess, where you, where you, where you like pay to a tax haven and then somehow, as a result, you avoid income taxes. I'm not sure I really understand that, but yeah, that sounds. But basically, the whole point, the whole big problem is tax havens. So what? So all that kind of stuff would be addressed by my single global tax policy. Um, See, I'm not even interested in learning exactly how they do this, you know. The point is but in any case, I'm actually for 0% corporate tax rates, so that wouldn't be a problem. So what you need is for individuals to be taxed, and they would be taxed all the same
And you're
way.
not allowed to hide your money. I don't care if it's in the Cayman Islands. We're going to make that illegal, Mitt Romney. We're going to make it illegal, okay? And so then every once in a while they do a tax holiday. Well, that must be nice. You remember when you got a tax holiday? I don't remember getting a tax holiday. No, that's only for corporations who bribe politicians. So they brought that rate down from 35% to 5%. And they said they were going to create more jobs. Color me surprised when it turns out they didn't. They offshore taxes. They took that 30% extra, put it in their pocket, gave it to their executives, and created no new
And
jobs.
see, that is a problem. It's not the corporations getting, you know, like escaping from taxes. It's these rich, like executives that are escaping from taxes, and more importantly, they're just earning far too much after taxes. Like I said, I just cap income at 10 times the basic income, which would amount to 100,000 after tax.
Because that's how it works if you just trust corporations to do the right thing. Corporations are not evil. They just want to maximize profit. That is what they're built for. So please don't be naive and be like, no, but the corporations will look out for our interest. No, they look out for their bottom line.
Well, I mean,
and finally, just
Yeah, they don't even look out for the bottom line. Like literally, corporations basically are willing to lose money to just pay their executives and their owners more. Like, because that's the thing that corporations are actually a tool for cheating the system, and so they won't necessarily try to even be the most efficient.
last quick thing, Medicare Advantage. You keep saying rationing healthcare, but Medicare gives you the bare minimum, and people seem to be very, very happy about it given how well it polls. But you can do Medicare Advantage and get more. I want you to be able to do that. If you're incredibly rich and you want every kind of treatment, I don't want to deny that to you. Get Medicare Advantage.
So
Yes.
Ben, let me just ask,
The
and you
problem
can
is when you
respond
pay-
to that too. Is
The problem is when you pay a higher tax rate throughout the course of your life to pay for all of the Medicare that you are talking about, you don't have enough money to pay for Medicare Advantage in many cases. And as far as this idea that, corporations they don't have any of your interests at heart.
But you're paying, so what? So basically, yeah, but it's because are actually enabling some people to have healthcare at all, when otherwise they wouldn't.
You are a corporation. TYT's it's a corporation. You have 80 employees. I assume that you're not just a greedy asshole, and that you actually would like to help your employees from time to time. And you just talked about how under Obama, everything got better with your business. Well, under Obama, he didn't radically escalate taxes. Okay, there was not a radical escalation of taxes under President Obama. And finally, when you seem to be identifying a higher tax rate in the 1950s with higher level of growth. So if that's the case, why not just tax everybody at 100% and we can have massive growth from here to eternity?
That's a stupid art. Cenk is not saying that. What Cenk is saying is that growth isn't stifled necessarily by higher tax rates. Um, but of course, yeah, I mean, typically poorer economies are able to grow more quickly than rich ones, and now that's why we're seeing like really fast growth in lots of Asian countries, which purport compared to the size of their entire economy, like so in percentage, is a lot higher than in rich countries. But like, yeah, it's obviously he's not saying that 100% tax rate would be the ideal for growth. What he's saying is that growth can be sustained despite having higher tax rates. He's not saying that it's because of higher tax rates.
Just ask, since we're talking about taxes, do you think we'll see tax reform in the next few months here?
Okay, so let me try to address all that in your question as well. So just real quick, look, guys, I said it however many questions ago. Of course, you have to find the right balance on all of these issues, including taxes. So I never said there's no end to how much you can.
I'm just asking
pay.
why, though.
Yeah. So this leads to no. Wait a minute. This leads to big government versus.
Well, like he pauses for a couple of seconds to think about what he's saying, and they laugh. Those fucking morons, those absolute assholes. I just absolutely loathe right wingers with an absolute uh undying passion. They just my hatred for right wingers. If I could just turn it into something physical, it could just destroy entire nations. Like I just feel that I've I've first I think experienced this with the Yahoo News comments section on internet, because I had Yahoo like as an email, so I just would read articles and then you see the comments, and they're just the most horrible things that would just be nonstop being spewed out by all the commentators. For some reason, Yahoo News would just attract all the scum of the earth that would comment the most abominable right-wing stuff, and that is, I think, what first really got me to like hate personally, right-wingers as not just right-wing policies, but really just the average person, the deplorables that Hillary Clinton mentioned, right? That I mean, she got criticized for that, but right-wingers are just deplorable people.
The small government. You're asking me what the ideal tax rate is, and then you did a straw man there for a second and said it should be 100%. I never said that.
No,
in fact, I said
no. You
Yeah,
said
strong.
you said the economy.
Oh
Listen,
yeah, boo. Yeah, boo. Right, boo yourselves, you morons, you motherfuckers.
let
You
me
said the
understand what
economy
he
grew,
said.
you said the economy grew faster when the top marginal tax rate was 91%. So I'm asking you,
Yeah, he's not saying that it grew faster because of that.
why shouldn't be top tax rate or all tax rates be 91%? You seem to be identifying a higher rate of growth with higher taxation. So I'm asking you,
Yeah.
on principle, you
Okay,
keep talking
now-
about the glories of a mixed economy. So now tell me about the glories of capital. I've heard about the glories of high tax rates. I've heard about the glories of government-provided health care. Now tell me some of the glories of actual capitalism, which is the basis for all the things you're talking. Tell me why it's good.
Right. So now, look, when I use the example of the 91% and 70% to give you a sense of that I was surprised and you'd be surprised to find out that our economy was booming in those times. That's not to say that that is the right tax rate for us today. And so the exercise of finding the right tax rate is, guys, try to follow along, okay? It's called logic.
Yeah. Boo, motherfuckers! You motherfuckers! I'm addressing you right now. Any Republican right winger who's watching this, maybe in the future, whatever. I am booing you 1,000 times back with the force of 1,000 suns. I will destroy you and your evil. Okay? You are the abomination, the scum of the earth that has no place in this universe. Okay? I absolutely loathe you and detest everything that you are. Spawn and slaves of Satan. I'm gonna write this. I don't know what to write. It's sort of weird, but I will destroy you if I have anything to say about it. Just switch Shapiro. Just switch Shapiro and Cenk. Just switch the words Shapiro and Cenk, and you would be completely correct. See, back when Cenk was for Medicare for all, now he's corporate Democrat slime. So here's actually a sort of lefty take. I don't know if he's corporate Democrat slime or not. Maybe he has done that. I don't know. Or I almost forgot Ben's wife is a doctor. Like, how is that? Why is this getting upvoted? Like, what? Also, do you know he studied at Harvard? Ben is the ultimate douche, dishonest douche, and you aren't. Yep, thank you. Thank you. Well, just because he douche doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's talking about. He actually doesn't know what he's talking about. Uh, he knows what he's talking about. What? I don't I don't understand this. I feel like everyone who insults Ben is jealous of him. Why else would you insult him instead of the one who was insulting the audience? It could have been you. Like literally the audience were assholes. I absolutely hate these sort of right-wing people. They're absolute abomination, okay? They were booing him from immediately, right? And so they said, "Oh, like he's insulting him." Um The problem check is he can't help when the crowd isn't clapping and cheering in agreement. What does he do? He insults the audience. Um Downvoting, reply, what should I say? Uh they were booing him before he started talking, and they are obviously idiots who deserve to be scorned. I'm gonna just downvote this. Hot take: the audience should not make a sound until the debate is over. Cheng's comments are childish, irrational, arbitrary. I admire Ben for keeping it cool. I'm gonna downvote this. I'm not gonna downvote this for now because I don't know what it's referring to. If you didn't know already, Ben's wife is a doctor. I'm not gonna downvote that because that's just factual. Oh, he won't let us not know. We know. Yeah. I think, I'm sorry, why does his wife being a doctor have any relevance to point out? The reason he brings up his wife being a doctor is because he's letting people know they have a relevant decision for defending doctors and workers. Yeah. He's telling you that to let you know he has legitimate reason to be against doctors becoming slaves, that the government, you know what, I'm going to reply. I'm a doctor, and Ben is an idiot, okay? I fully support I sort of fully support universal health care. Okay, that's right. How about that? Let's maybe hear it from the wife directly, from the horse's mouth. Um, when Sheng talks, all I can hear is Crowder's parody of him. Like literally, that's ridiculous. Like you're just being ridiculous. Like Cenk is smart. Like he's just, I mean, not smart, but like not just smart, but rational, especially. Um, Cenk got flustered, gave me the impression that he's not well read. Like everybody just pauses a bit when you're trying to think, and just can't. He got booed right off the bat. Yeah, considering that they booed him at the beginning, I consider it completely understandable that he would act like that. What was Cenk thinking? Come here to debate Shapiro. Look, I'm gonna. And so they think that's actually a good thing, and somehow this is meant to be a good thing. Ben owned this clown. Why? Okay, I'm gonna edit this. You're subhuman. Why are all commentators here subhuman idiots? You spawn of Satan. I will destroy you if it is within my means to do so. And that is just, I'm saying that very literally, in fact. So, yep. Returned error. Save. Oh, I'm not allowed to say subhuman. Not say degenerate. Okay. Where are my comments? Sort by newest first. Comment. Okay.
So it
No,
would be preposterous.
the left has done a very poor job of really completely vilifying right wingers as they should be. Okay, right wingers are not just a bit wrong. You know that there's the left. The problem is because it's based on this Marxist idea of the proletariat against the capitalists. They have an enormous amount of sympathy for like poor and middle class orcs. Okay, they have an enormous amount of sympathy for the degenerate subhumans, which they absolutely shouldn't. Okay, it's a complete mistake. Degenerate subhumans are an enormous problem, and they deserve to be completely demonized and vilified. Right? They have to be demonized and vilified because they're horrible. That you have to feel the same horror you have to treat them with the same absolute disgust and scorn that you would an actual Nazi, okay? Like not because they are actual Nazis, but I mean an actual like German swastika Nazi type, okay? Because literally it's the same ideology.
Preposterous to set the tax rate at 0. It would be preposterous to set it at 100%. So what we have to do as a society is figure out where we can maximize the most amount of good for the country.
Should it be closer to 0 or
revenue
closer
for the
to
government,
100?
but not too much away from us. So, for example, the reason why when taxes are higher, it winds up being better for the economy is because it recirculates the money. So if you give it to the rich, this is hilarious. If you're uneducated, please at least don't
Yeah.
don't make it obvious.